All set? Okay. Welcome, everyone. Today is August 24, 2021. We're at our regular City Council meeting. It is 7:02 p.m. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Please, I call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you're following along on the agenda, we are now in Section 3, Citizens to be Heard. Summer, how many citizens have made comments online?
I haven't received any online since a few, there is one.
Okay.
It came in at 6:57.
Okay, thanks for checking, double checking for us. What I'm going to ask is that we keep our comments to 2 minutes. A little ding will go off so that you'll know that you hit the 2-minute mark. I'm not going to be in the habit of stopping somebody from finishing their thought, but please be respectful of the time of others that would like to speak tonight as well. And I'm grateful for all of you to be here, especially those that would like to be heard. Now, Shar has decided she's going to go first and has taken her seat at the table. But I will say that what we're asking for citizens to be heard is that you come to the podium. You're fine there if you'd like to sit. That is absolutely fine. If you prefer to sit, that's fine. But in that way, the folks in the hall can hear you as well.
I'm going to remove my mask respectfully so that I can be heard. I have anyway, hopefully that's okay. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Charlotte Mates. I've lived in the Moab area for 26 years of my life, and tonight I wanted to bring the attention to the transportation in Moab. First of all, I'd like to thank Karen Guzman-Newton, Mike Duncan, and all of the staff that worked on getting the major grant that is coming from the federal government to help us with that. I also want to call your attention to an article that was in last week's August 19th to 26th Moab Sun News on page 11. Sound off on your transportation needs. UDOT seeks public input on the bike lanes, trails, multi-use paths on state roads. Public comment period on UDOT's active transportation plan lasts through August 28th, which I believe is Saturday. UDOT is urging people to visit the website, publicinput.com/UDOT planning to respond to a quick survey. Comment can also be submitted by emailing planning@utah.gov or calling 385-360-1900. I've also included in this handout a letter to the editor that I drafted to both Moab Sun and the Times Independent, hoping that it will be in this week and that everyone in this community will look at this as an opportunity now. We don't always have an opportunity. This is the planning stage. I worked for UDOT for 5 years before coming to Moab, and now is the time to speak up, speak out. Please be heard. The squeaky wheel is going to get the money. I talked to the person, and the main slogan I'd like to leave you all with is that public transportation needs to be Link on Utah in every single community and Link on America. Thank you for your time. There are copies out in the hallway if anybody would like one.
Thank you for your comment, and then you can just put your form that you filled out in the basket. Thank you. And we're just going to go popcorn style, so whoever would like to speak next, please.
I'll jump up.
Welcome.
Hey guys, Wes Shannon here with the Downtown Main Street Alliance. I've been in contact with many of the business owners over the past couple of weeks, and basically this is the word on the street to sum it up. Council members, Downtown Main Street Alliance would like to officially oppose the proposed property tax for the city of Moab. We're witnessing an unprecedented amount of opposition to implementing a city property tax and would encourage the city council to listen to their community. Before rushing to do a quick sales job on what the money can be used for, the city of Moab should show us what exactly it'll be used for. As your downtown businesses that are currently collecting the money that you're spending, we would like to see more efficiencies, effectiveness, integrity, and higher professional standards. Currently, we are not seeing a good return on our investment, and you can continue to try and get more from your residents and businesses while offering less. Now more than ever, we need the city to work collectively with our businesses, be it health professionals, developers, hairdressers, restaurateurs, bookshop owners, mechanics, tour companies, outdoor gear stores, gift shops, grocers, and most importantly, the residents, to create community, not division. The city is one that received a free ride during COVID, keeping its doors locked for nearly a year, while businesses all struggled to follow guidelines to remain open, be good hosts, and collect sales tax. The problem is the lack of trust between the residents and Moab City. The absence of accountability has jeopardized the community's faith in the vision of Moab's future. The council is not holding their city manager accountable, who in turn holds staff accountable. Businesses are intimidated to speak up, fearing retribution and not knowing who to go to when we can't reach staff for answers, when we don't get email or phone responses or get shuffled, dismissed, and ignored. Citizens in the businesses community are left feeling burdensome to City Hall. It leaves the community asking questions like, what else are you allowing? What are you trying to hide? What are you not paying attention to? And can our city leaders and staff be trusted? This type of behavior wouldn't be acceptable in the private sector and definitely should not be tolerated within the public sector when you're spending and directing public funds. The council needs to vote no on the city property tax. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Wes. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening. Here I am again. Dear City Council and Mayor, I would like to start with expressing my gratitude for every one of you here holding a position in public service. Representing and having to make decisions for an entire town cannot be easy. Most likely it's more stressful and discouraging than we all think. Thank you, Mayor, for taking your time yesterday to answer my questions from 2 weeks ago regarding the proposed property tax increase. As I have responded to you, CCing all City Council members, unfortunately the answers did not necessarily clarify why the tax increase is needed now. In fact, the longer the decision-making period for the rate increase goes on, the more I believe it is a matter of how our finances have been and are being managed. While I was searching to get an answer on what other cities in the state are getting by without a city property tax, I came across the transparent.utah.gov website. For people not familiar with the site, it provides public information on wages and benefits paid for Utah state government employees. And for the sake of being in my 2 minutes, I'm just going to go to keep all the details out. So the pattern was quite noticeable. The city of Moab pays their employees rather generously compared to other cities in the state, regardless of the structure of government. I would like you to know that I absolutely understand the need to compensate people in stressful positions. I also understand that the compensation makes it easier to find competent and knowledgeable candidates for the jobs in city administration. But I must honestly say that these findings absolutely blew me away. At this point, I'd like to add a little fun fact. Iceland, which is an entire nation, visitors peaked at 2.3 million in 2018, bringing in a revenue stream of 177 billion Icelandic krona, which is equivalent to 920 million US dollars. Moab is on its way to doubling that amount of visitors, apparently coming close to 5 million this year. With the influx of visitors each year, Moab should be one of the wealthiest communities in the state, if not in the nation. Yet it has a poverty rate that is 5% higher than the state's. The wages and benefits for some of our city employees, even if compared to successful jobs in the private sector, in and outside of Moab, are high and completely out of sync with the rest of the average income levels around here. It is very difficult to understand the increases in compensation over the last few years when infrastructure issues and our housing crisis were absolutely foreseeable. and it seems completely unjust to me to ask the residents of Moab to make up for any shortcoming in the general funds line. In fact, it feels rushed and rather uninspired. During the last city council meeting, we were told, kids, a tax increase will have to come. We heard you and it might, but at this point in time, I sincerely ask you, our representatives, that before we cross that bridge, potentially sending Moab onto a path that many residents despise, to listen to us and to take your time to take a closer look at what is being spent where and why within this city and this building. Thank you again for your service and giving me the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Emily Sukenik, and I recently resigned from my position as director at the Moab Recreation and Aquatic Center. Before my last day, I sent an email to the mayor and the city council members addressing the reasons for my departure. However, I only heard back from one person. So I'm speaking today so that my experience with the city can be heard. When I started working for the city of Moab, I worked for the sports department as an assistant. It was obvious to me then that that department is favored by specific superiors. There were many, and there was zero accountability being held regarding work completion. There were many unhappy community members because of this. I took it upon myself to designate my own responsibilities and made sure to complete them. I also noticed that there were other departments within the city that were similarly favored based on friendships and intimate relationships. Looking back, I do not see this as fair. When I was promoted to director at the MRAC, I was able to see city operations through a completely new lens. The MRAC is not favored by superiors and is seen as a financial burden. I could not make headway when it came to budget amendments, facility improvements, appropriate wages for staff, and the hiring process. It took upwards of 3 weeks to hire someone, and this made things incredibly difficult for our team. For 9 months, I picked up the slack and did janitorial duties 3 nights per week, as did one of my colleagues, and I'm grateful for that. HR did not take any of my concerns seriously. Rather, I was treated as if I was an inconvenience. When employees don't feel comfortable going to their HR department, they lose their last resort for support. The unfortunate result is then disgruntled employees that have to stick around for financial reasons, or employees that choose to seek out new jobs with supportive environments like I did. Throughout my 2 years with the city, I witnessed both concerns and unprofessional behavior being brushed under the rug, things that were immoral, unethical, and that in other places would have been appropriately addressed. Favoritism, lack of support, and lack of transparency only end up creating worse problems. In bringing these concerns to your attention today, my hope is to be heard and that a solution can be found. I love and care for this town, and to see things running the way they are is saddening and disconcerting to me. To any others that have similar experiences, I encourage you to come forward as well. The only way to make a difference is to speak up. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Aaron Davies. Thank you for giving us time to talk to you. I appreciate the service that you do. I did mention I'd be willing to help. I guess that's more clear what I was meaning by that. I'm here to talk about the property tax, and I will say the same thing I've said every time, that fundamentally I see the increasing in property tax as exactly contrary to the stated goal of affordable housing. That's exactly what it's meant to hit at. So that's kind of at a fundamental level, the big problem with it. Beyond that, you've developed a list of needs, long-time needs, certainly are needed. There's no doubt. Any years in the past, those things could have been addressed. Maybe I'll learn more, but it appears to me that maybe the harder work needs to be done of choosing those priority things, boring things, not fun things, rather than funding the fun things, the things that people applaud over getting done. And it's hard work, It's becoming more and more real to me to imagine how hard the work is. So I appreciate that. But still, I ask that you not have the property tax increase, that rather going forward, we find ways to pay for those needed projects without increasing the taxes. That would mean, of course, reducing payments other ways. Not easy stuff, not popular stuff. It occurs to me that this kind of position, this service, this well, not really volunteer anymore, but this service, this public service, brings upon many negative impacts on you. And it's a real thing to me that that is the job that you all have asked for and others are asking for, to make those hard decisions that are not popular, because people don't applaud you because that street is fixed. Maybe some of the people eventually do, but it's the harder stuff to do. So I would just ask that that is what you concentrate on. It's making the hard decisions. Otherwise, the point that I think about with adding more tax revenue to the city that is already increasing its tax revenue from the sales tax, it's a philosophy of should the government be bigger or should it be smaller? And with a bigger government, there's more power. In society, we have an issue of greed for money. There's also an issue of greed for power. And I would just respectfully ask that the idea of lessening what government is involved in, doing just the basics, volunteer organizations can be put together, donations can be put together to pay for the fun projects. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And once you do make your comment, if you intend to stay for the duration of the meeting, please feel free to sit back down. If not, then I would just ask to free up space for those that are in the hallway. Who would like to speak next? Wonderful. You're it. You're it. Thank you and welcome.
Thanks very much. My name's Dwight Johnston. I just really want to encourage you to not get in the property tax business. You know, the school's raising the property tax again this year. They do every year, and they always fall. They're always short on their budget. Almost every year they have a truth in taxation hearing, and they raise the property taxes. So does the county. And this year is really painful because lots of people are getting their property reappraised, and there's people that just can't really afford to pay the amount of property taxes that their houses are starting to get now. And if you're a landlord and you have a rental house, you raise the property tax, you get it reappraised. Taxes are going up by some people double this year already. And you get your house reappraised and all of a sudden your taxes double. You have to pass it on immediately to the renters. You go out that day and raise your renters $100 a month. You don't have a choice. And so it seems to me like what you guys are advocating here goes absolutely against your whole philosophy of lower income housing. I mean, it's not an area that Moab needs attacked right now. So I really encourage you to figure out ways to help develop industries that produce more sales tax, because that's really the main revenue area for the city, and it's a great place to start and sort of, continue to grow that area, not just raising the sales tax all the time. Grand Junction, you don't even pay sales tax on groceries. So Moab has a real high sales tax rate too. But there are businesses you could help promote that would increase sales taxes as opposed to always being opposed to businesses. Let's encourage some businesses and increase sales tax and leave property tax to the county and the schools, because they're already dinging everybody a lot. So anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak and thank all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Perfect timing. Who's next? Come on. We know that there are others that would like to speak, and we certainly want to hear from you. And I will just start saying names. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me speak. I'm not very good with microphones, clearly, so I hope I didn't blow anybody's eardrums out. I'm Susie Johnston.
I was going to wait till somebody went between my husband and I, but that clearly didn't happen. We own businesses here, and it's always interesting to me when they propose a tax, when the city or the county or the school district, they show you what the cost is going to be for your home. But really the real cost is to the businesses, and there's always this kind of, in what seems like to me, thought process, well, let's push it off on the businesses. And I guess that makes some sense because it makes a homeowner's payment not go up so much, but it makes the business owner's payment go up a lot. And then with all of our property values going up, then we pay more and more taxes. And at some point, my husband and I haven't raised the rents on our apartments for years because we know those people and we love them and we know they struggle, and our storage rents are less than the Grand Junction storage rents. But how long do you think that's going to last? So when you raise the property taxes, you increase the payment for individuals' homes, for their rent, for their storage units, for their clothing, for their food, for their gas, for their fast food. And pretty soon this town is going to be a place that only rich people can live. And that's just not right. We have a great community and we need to not tax it to death. So thanks for listening to me and appreciate your thoughts, and I urge you to vote no. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Jason Taylor, and I have a few businesses here in town, and I'm also a landlord. I have a duplex here. And, the last meeting was talked about that, landlords raise their rent every year. And I haven't raised my rent in probably 8 or 9 years. I have people living in my duplexes that struggle every month, and they're great renters. They've been there for a long time. And I talked to one of them about raising rent, and he almost started crying because he was on a fixed budget and trying to make it work. And I think to say that the businesses here in town, we're like everyone else. We've had to increase our wages, which we're happy to do, to get people up to that point where they can make it, where they can buy homes, where they can do things. But it comes at a cost, and it comes at a cost to businesses, and it comes at a cost to these people. And putting that tax on those people who are just barely making it. There's a lot of people in this town who are just barely making their house payments, and that tax is going to put them over the edge. I was there for a lot of years where I open that thing up and just kind of squint and see, is this going up? And I thought that at the last meeting when it was talked about that, I think Ben and Joel mentioned that in years past they had said we were planning on a 5% increase, and that increase was put into the budget and it was spent. And they thought, well, what if we didn't spend? What if we stayed within that budget and we were able to take that 5 or 7% and put it away, and not use it? And I think that's a great idea. I love that idea. I thought that was an amazing idea. I think that's something that should be tried for a few years to see what it does. To stay within that budget of where you were for that year, and then next year budget that 7% in, and then bank or hopefully bank on that 5% in the future is a great way to do it and stuff. And I would really support that plan, and I would hope that you guys would say no on that and look at other options. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
My name's Roseanne Lewis, and I work at the hospital. And I urge you to vote no on the property tax because I submitted a comment, but I just wanted to add that it's really hard for the hospital to even get professionals that get paid more than normal people, get paid more than, I don't want to say normal people, get paid more than many people. They're above average. And we can't even get nurses that can afford to live in Moab. And especially with this pandemic, I think that's really important that we don't have a town that even professionals can't afford to get to pay rent. So anyway, I just wanted you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? No. But thank you for asking. Paige, did you want to talk? Jean? No? Okay. Anyone in the hall? I can't see you, but I would like to welcome you to come and speak if you'd like to. And I know it's really hard to get up and speak, and I just want you to feel welcome to do so.
This will be my first time.
Well, all right then.
But
Welcome.
I've only been in Moab 2 years, and I've been the same job, maintenance man.
Will you tell us your name, please?
Chris Cantrell,
Thanks, Chris.
and I'm a maintenance man for 60-unit apartments. And the rent's gone up like twice since I've been there. I lose people, good people. And I have the courage from these folks that come up here and was brave enough to make me get up here and tell you I get my butt chewed out. Just because I'm the maintenance, and my management company I work for is in Idaho. And yet every time the rent goes up, I'm the only one that can take it out on. So I'm gonna oppose, say, nah, don't do it. Thank you, have a nice day.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Kyle Kaiser. I spoke at the last meeting about this, and I'm a landlord in town, and I was a little shocked last time to hear some of the comments from council members and staff members about the effects of raising the property tax on the housing market and the rental market in town, and how that would affect residents of this town and people that would be renting regardless. The comment was made that landlords could choose or choose not to pass a property tax increase onto their tenants. That some landlords are not in the position, they have a choice on that to still be able to make their mortgage payments, they have to pass that tax on to their tenants. And so a lot of the other property owners here have spoken to a lot of the same things that are on my mind. So I would just echo those things, and that there, I think, has been kind of a PR problem with this property tax and explaining what it's going for, along with some very legitimate questions about the budget. And it's difficult to prevent the appearance of balancing the impact of tourism on local residents and long-term residents of the town. So I would encourage just a vote no on the property tax.
Thank you. Again, I know getting up and speaking is difficult, but this is your opportunity to do it if you'd like to do so. And I'll just ask one more time for the folks in the hallway, if there's anybody out there that would like to speak.
Do you want me to go out there in case it's hard for people to hear?
Is it hard for you to hear me out there? No. Okay. Thanks for offering. Okay. If there are no other citizens that would like to be heard this evening, we can move on to our next agenda item. Okay. We will move on to our administrative reports. 4.1, city manager updates. Joel.
We're going to have an addition tonight. Summer is also going to present on some ranked choice voting materials. And so we'll start with the chief, and we'll let him present updates on his department. And then we'll let Summer go, and then I'll wind up after that.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Chief, welcome. Thanks for being here tonight. Either way.
Okay.
Your choice. Podium's fun because you can kind of see more people. So.
Because what?
You can see more people.
Okay, gotcha. Council, Mayor, thank you for having me here tonight to give you an update on things happening at the police department. First, and probably the most important thing that I'd like to talk about is staffing. We have been going through a hiring process for the last several months, and we're taking it slow. intentionally. I'm really looking to hire quality people who are going to mesh very well with our team and who are very community focused. So rather than piling on a bunch of people who may or may not work, we're really taking our time and trying to get the right people into these positions. It's an important position and we want the right people to be working for us. So as it stands right now, we are at 11 officers. We have one new officer starting the academy next week and another one starting in November. And we have 2 offers out from interviews that we did yesterday with 2 pretty extraordinary candidates. So we're getting there. If all of these work out, that'll put us at 15, which will still leave us down 2, and we'll just continue to look for people. But we're very grateful for the folks who we are bringing on. I think we've got some extremely talented individuals. As part of that staffing, I think it's notable that we currently have 3 female officers. One of the officers we're sending to the academy, the one going in November, is also a female. And one of the officers that we interviewed yesterday who we're extending an offer, or candidates that we're extending an offer to, is also a female. So if all of those work out, that'll put us at 5 officers, female officers in the department, which I think is extraordinary. I haven't done the math on it. That would put us somewhere around 33, 34% female to male ratio. The average in law enforcement is 12.8%. So I feel I'm super proud of the fact that we're able to bring that into the mix. The female officers add something that, nothing against male officers, but they bring a different perspective and a different way of communicating and dealing with the public, and it's something that we have been lacking for a long time. So I'm pretty thrilled about that. Training, we have coming up QPR, which is question, persuade, refer. It's a suicide prevention training. We're doing that with all of our staff, including civilian staff, so sworn and civilian. We have Marlise Jones with the Utah Prosecution Council coming down to do training on sex assault investigations. We're doing training after that on report writing, after that search and seizure, and then we're ongoing firearms training. So we have some really good and important training opportunities that are coming up for the officers. Our vehicle fleet, seems like it's always in flux, but we were able to obtain a grant from the USDA for a vehicle, $50,000 to apply toward a vehicle that we'll be able to buy instead of lease. That was 100% accomplished by Kelly Day, our office manager. She spent hours and hours and hours working on that grant, and she was able to get it. So I'm super proud of her and thrilled that she was able to get that to help us get some vehicles that we do need. Currently, we have 13 vehicles in the fleet. We've got 3 coming through the pipeline, which leaves us still needing 1 to 3, depending on how long the Dodge Chargers last for us. So we'll keep looking at other opportunities where we can, possibly secure grants to get cars. It was in the paper last week, but we did promote Braden Palmer, who was formerly a sergeant with our department, to assistant chief. He's been in there now, 2 or 3 weeks. And he's doing an absolutely phenomenal job. He's taken a lot of my workload that I was doing both jobs off of my shoulders, freeing me up to do some other important things, and he's been a huge asset to the department ever since he started, and he'll continue to be in that role as assistant chief. He is out as of right about now on paternity leave. He and his wife are having their second baby tomorrow, so that's super exciting. And he'll be out for about 3 or 4 weeks, but he's Braden, he's a workaholic, so he'll be on his laptop and, helping out as he can, but I'm super thrilled for him and his family. When we pulled the SRO position a couple of years ago, the part of that position was a law enforcement class at the high school. I'm really excited to announce that we are continuing that class this year. So we don't have an SRO, but one of our detectives, Monty Reisenhoover, came to me earlier in the summer and said, hey, I really want to teach this class. I think I have the bandwidth to do it. The school's on board. Can we do it? Of course, I authorized it. So the class started last week, and he'll be bringing in officers and agents from other departments and other organizations to help teach the class. But that's a 3-day-a-week class, and it's just a super way for us to interact with the kids at the high school. Last but not least, we had we're finally able to get back to doing some of the community engagement things that we have enjoyed in the past. And then with COVID, we weren't able to do them. So now that we're able to kind of get out into the public again, we did a public barbecue and free swim day at the pool a couple weeks ago. Out of that, we handed out about 180 hot dogs and had a lot of interaction with people from the public, visitors to the town, as well as citizens, which was awesome. And we got a lot of good feedback on that, so that was really cool. The next one coming up is November 5th at 5 o'clock at the Center Street Gym. We're doing a public safety chili cook-off. So we're inviting all of the local public safety agencies to participate in the chili cook-off. Each agency will pick a cook, and then they'll bring in a pot of chili. The public's invited to attend, and we encourage the public to attend. And we're going to be accepting donations at the chili cook-off. The donations will be then given to the Recreation Department, who will use them to fund essentially scholarships for kids who want to play sports with the city, but may not necessarily have the financial means to do it. So that'll be a really cool way to interact with the public and to provide an opportunity for some local youth to participate in team sports. We'll have more information on that as we develop. It's just something that we have decided to do in the last couple of weeks, so it's still kind of new and in development. But as soon as we've got everything finalized, we'll make sure that all the information is out to the public. Any questions?
Could you talk real quick about the EV stuff you're working on with Mila?
On what?
The EV stuff you're working on with Mila, electric vehicle?
Yes, so just, I think it was last week, we started looking at opportunities to replace our standard patrol vehicles with either full electric or hybrid vehicles. They are more expensive in the long run. Theoretically, they should be cost less to operate. So Mila, with our sustainability director, is looking at ways that we can build the infrastructure here to support them, what the costs are with those vehicles themselves, what vehicles are even available that are suitable for police use. So hopefully at some point down the line, we'll be able to transition away from entirely gasoline patrol vehicles to either full electric or hybrid vehicles. Other questions?
I just have a comment. I was lucky enough to go to the clap-in for kids at school. And,
saw you there. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciated you and officers being there, and I met one of the new officers. And I also wanted to thank you guys for your Facebook post about the ongoing homicide investigation. I know that meant a lot to people to see something written up there. And then I wanted to find out, how does one become a chili cook-off judge?
You're
making me hungry.
We haven't figured that out yet. What we were thinking of doing is just having like little slips.
Oh, that's a good idea.
People will write their vote on the slip and then put it into a box. And what we're going to do is have some kind of super cheesy traveling trophy made. Like just the worse the better. And then the agency that wins, we're planning on doing this every year. The agency that wins will get to display the super cheesy trophy in their department until the following year, and then it'll just kind of travel around Moab. So yeah, I don't know if we're going to have a panel or if it'll be, you know, a citizen vote thing, but we'll figure it out. We'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
So Brett, I just wanted to thank you for taking a look at First North with the radar signs that we talked about. And secondly, my stepson took me for a ride in his Tesla a while back and floored it down a residential street. And all I can say is that if you get Tesla-like vehicles for your electric police force, you'll either terrify the people that you're trying to nab, so to speak, because they'll realize there's no chance of getting away. Right. Or you may terrify your own passengers in the car. I know it terrified me. Okay, it's something else. So. But congratulations. I hope that works out for you.
Thank you. We do too.
Yeah, so Chief, thank you very much for the community outreach. That is a big deal for youth to be able to feel comfortable with police officers and creating those relationships. That's really important, and I appreciate you doing that. And we just today received an email about potentially getting information on calls that it was sort of directed towards the Grant County Sheriff's Department, but is it possible to get sort of a rundown of what your department is making calls to, I mean, be it, you know, break-ins or speeding or domestic violence. I mean, I'm just wondering if that is that a tool that could be utilized for us?
As far as generating statistics to show which,
Yes.
Unfortunately, the records management system that we use is not sophisticated on the reporting end. So it's very difficult for us to pull any kind of statistic out of it without doing hours and hours and hours of manual work. We can pull some very basic generic statistics out of it. And we could certainly do something like that just to kind of see what the different, I shouldn't say that we can. I could contact the company and find out if they have the ability to pull some statistics that'll show us, for instance, how many domestic violence incidents we responded to last year, how many speeding tickets and things like that. So I know that some of it can be done. I'm not sure about the other. So unfortunately, the company that we use was purchased by another company who has no intent of improving the software, and the general consensus is that they bought it to phase it out and force agencies to purchase their software.
And
so we're kind of in this position where we have this antiquated software that is not really well supported anymore.
we had this discussion about a week ago. The software upgrade's about $250,000. It's substantial.
So just doing a tally is almost impossible.
It's not impossible. I think we can get some rough statistics,
Yeah.
but that's about as far down as we can dive.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's an interesting, discussion, because we do have such a myriad, and Kaylin and I have asked for, a long time to just sort of know what your department is dealing with, because, we don't know. And, we hear narcotics that are a big deal in the community, like alcohol, like, drunken driving. I mean, and just having a gauge of sort of the issues that we have as a community and the awareness of it, I think is
Right.
really important.
I'll look into it. I'll see what we can pull out. I can tell you that the last year to 18 months is not going to be accurate because we've been so short-staffed that we can't be proactive. So I am confident that things like DUIs, which require proactivity, speeding tickets that require productivity, et cetera, those are going to be down.
Right.
Just the way it is. But we could look at the last maybe 5 or 6 years and pull some statistics to run to show, year to year to year. But I'll work on that, and then I'll get those out to the council
That'd be
members.
great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Other questions? All right. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for all you do. Joel? Are we,
I passed my mic.
okay.
I'm over here,
Thank you.
mainly because I'm running this. Lisa's going to run it for me, so I still have to make sure we're
Well,
feeding out.
tell everybody who you are, just in case.
I'm Summer, I'm the city recorder. I am giving you an update on our election season. We're just getting into it. As you all know, we had 7 candidates file for the mayoral position and 6 candidates file for the 2 city council seats that are available. And that information is actually available on our website. If you click on the 2021 declared candidates, their information is posted there. Just to give you a heads up, we are working with the League of Women Voters. We'll have a meeting set up with them tomorrow to discuss education and outreach so that we are getting the information out, because we are one of the 23 cities participating in ranked choice voting this year, and it's a little bit different than our elections of past. So we're just going to make sure we have information available for people, letting them know what the process is going to look like. Their ballots are going to look a little bit different, but we do have quite a bit of information posted on our website. The Lieutenant Governor's Office has provided us with some educational materials that they have put together. And we're just going to show you a quick little video about how ranked choice voting works that's posted on our website so that people can see what that looks like. But let me switch my view. Yep.
So, Summer, just to clarify for our audience, I think it's correct, is it not? Utah County is going to bring down a special extra computer so that on election night, we can expect the final results to come in quickly.
That's what they've indicated to me.
As opposed to New York City, that you guys might have read about where it took them a long time.
That's what they've indicated to me, is that they plan to have a couple of people down here with a laptop and the software available so that they can do the tallying on election night here.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
The video's not working? Oh, well, that's fun.
Maybe refresh your browser and then try that, clicking on the link again.
Nope. Okay, well, apparently we're not going to show you a video.
Well, it looks like it's going to where it's being directed, but whatever the home is for that.
Give us just a sec.
No worries. There's a deep level of anxiety when you're computing in front of a room full of people, I'm sure.
We have another version of it.
We'll get there. It's not. Oh. Click share, toggle off. So you can Sorry. It's okay. All right. Technology has been my friend the last few meetings, as you all know, so this is about par for the course, right?
It's no worries.
Okay, it's going back.
This is good information for all of us to have. It looks like we're just missing some volume here. Should we restart it?
Voters ballot. Their first choice is blue, second green, third red, fourth yellow, and fifth orange. The second column represents a different vote. Several cities throughout Utah are participating in ranked choice voting in the 2021 municipal election. Ranked choice voting is different from traditional voting in that you rank the candidates on the ballot from your favorite to least favorite. Check it out. Let's say we're voting for one open spot on city council. The candidates are blue, green, orange, red, and yellow. This first column is one voter's ballot. Their first choice is blue, second green, third red, fourth yellow, and fifth orange. The second column represents a different voter's choices. Their first choice is red, second yellow, third blue, fourth green, and fifth orange. Each column here represents a different voter's ballot. After votes are completed, the candidate who receives more than 50% of first choice votes will be declared a winner. If no candidate receives more than 50% of first choice votes, then we will proceed to round by round ranked choice voting. As you can see here, blue received more than 50% of the votes in the first round, which means they are declared the winner. But what if we're running an election for 2 open city council spots? Here's how that would work. And because blue already won, we won't include them when counting the votes for the second position. In round 1 of counting for the second position, no other color has received more than 50% of the votes. We will proceed to round 2. At this point, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated. In this case, orange must be removed. Unlike traditional voting with ranked choice voting, the votes for the eliminated candidate, orange, are transferred to the voter's next preferred candidate. By transferring the votes from orange to their second choice, green receives more than 50% of votes to win. And what if we're going to elect somebody for a third open spot on city council? Here, we'll add orange back in, because they didn't have enough votes to win the second spot, but still have a chance of winning a different open spot. Now, we start the ballot counting over again to fill the third spot. as you can see, red wins as the third color. So although the ballot looks different this year, it's simple now that we've learned how it works, why ranking your preferred candidates matters. Learn more at rankthevoteutah.com.
So there you have it. And again, that video is available on the city's website under the election information, so if anybody would like to view it again, just to get familiar with it, it's there, and then we'll be posting additional information on our website and then on our social media pages. Lisa did put in an ad this week in the paper, just so people are aware of what our next steps are.
And a sample ballot will be available prior to?
Yes.
And that's something that
they're
we can...
required to provide a sample ballot. Utah County will be providing that to us.
And that's something that we can share as widely as possible
It's
so that...
required to be posted, so yes.
But we'll be doing a mail-in.
What's that?
It'll be a mail-in ballot?
Yeah, the election is by mail.
Okay.
The ballots will be addressed to Utah County, and those will be, as they're receiving them, they'll be updating that daily. That was part of the ILA that we signed with Utah County. We will have a ballot drop location here. The problem is that we'll have to get the ballots from here up there, so that may take a little bit longer. So those that are dropped off here at City Hall, they won't be processed daily just because we've got to get them up to Utah County.
So we'll be efficient with the trips up there. And then the night of the election, will we expect results that night?
Yes, and Utah County has indicated that they would send someone down with the laptop and the software, and they would be doing the counting on site. That's what they had told me previously, and I'll just verify with them, but that's what I'm expecting to happen.
So that those ballots that are hand-delivered as opposed to mailed
Mhm.
in
Will be counted that same night. Mhm.
And the only, then we'll just wait for the official count because there'll be probably a wait period of what has been mailed up.
Right, right.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about ranked choice voting from the council? No? Okay, well, thank you so much for giving that presentation. Thank you, Ronnie, for asking for that.
It says in that video that it's clear now, so I hope everybody got it.
Yeah.
I recommend watching it quite a few times. It's quite interesting. There's other videos online too and other information as well. So, and then other than that, COVID's still going strong. We have masks required in City Hall. We've had several cases amongst employees here at City Hall over the last couple of weeks. We have a lot of employees who are out. We're trying to do our best to cover, but we encourage everyone to wear a mask and get vaccinated and deal with it so we can be done with it. That's it.
Okay. Then we're moving on to section 5 of our agenda, mayor and council reports. I'll go first. And actually, I wanted to start with a moment of silence. If you all please join me for Crystal Turner and Kylie Schulte. Thank you so much. Okay, this past 2 weeks, I wanted to just report out that how grateful I am that John Curtis, our congressman, our representative in Congress, visited us, did a town hall, hosted a town hall where we had a pretty good showing. And I just continue to be grateful and feel very represented by him coming to Moab, meeting with different stakeholders while he's here. It really means a lot to us. And I hear that Senator Lee is headed this way and will be here on Saturday. So it feels good to have so much attention down here. I brought to all of you that there was a boundary commission that was reforming, and we decided that whoever sits as mayor will serve on that commission. We had a meeting, and it was kind of just a structural thing. But when there's a dispute with annexation, that's when that board meets. But there was no action at that meeting. I attended a ULCT board meeting and LPC meeting, and there is an annual conference coming up. I wanted to check in with this council who thought they might be interested and willing to attend on behalf of the city. As a board member, I get to enjoy a very reduced rate and love staying with friends when I'm there, but I didn't know if anyone else wanted to sign up and attend. And I don't want to put you on the spot now, so how about, we'll just need to know. We're just going to watch the video again. So will you please let Kelly know if you'd like to attend that conference? There's definitely a lot to be talked about and discussed. And I won't go into the details of all the stuff that's happening with the league, but please do feel free to reach out to me with questions. Welcome students back to school. Fall is fun. And I want to give a shout out and a thank you to all of the citizens that have filed for mayor and for council. It is an awesome experience to be in this role, and I'm very grateful for those that are willing to serve, both sitting here at this dais, but also interested in sitting at the dais as well. So I just wanted to say a sincere thank you. And I definitely encourage you, it's nice to see some of the candidates here tonight. I definitely encourage those that have filed to attend these meetings, because I think you have the vision of what it's like to be on council or as mayor, and then there's the reality. And this is part of it. So a thank you to all of you, and that's it from me. Mike?
It's all water stuff. Very quickly. Kins Lake, has been short on irrigation water, but with all the rainfall and low demand and so forth, it's looking a little better than it was. It's still way down. They've had their problems trying to drill a new well that they hope to put in service to help keep the lake full, and that has not worked out. That's a messy problem, and I can't dwell further on that one. And the TI has started a editorial committee, I think it is. Doug is here, and Doug, I want to thank you for inviting me to participate in that. We did have our first meeting, about a half a dozen of us, including Carly and myself on behalf of the city, and then Curtis Wells was there, and a couple other citizens, and Doug right off the bat tried to construct his first draft editorial, if you will, and instantly ran across the same problem we all have, that water is a very complicated subject. Simple questions and complicated answers. So good luck, Doug. What can I say? That's it.
Thank you, Mike. Ronnie?
Okay. It's been busy, so sorry. I'm going to try and talk fast, but fit this in. Let's see. Attended the John Curtis Star Hall visit on the 11th. I did have a question, Mayor. Is Mike Lee going to meet with residents, or is he just in town?
He is, I have not, all I heard was, I got a text today from one of his staffers and about him being in town on Saturday, and that's it. So I have not heard that there is any town hall planned. If there is, I of course will share with all of you.
Okay. Let's see. Had a meeting with Mila from the Sustainability Department. Appreciated that. She just wanted input on the sustainability plan revamp and her plans for participation in outreach planning. I think she met with all of us. I wanted to thank Ben for, I think he probably gets a bowling trophy or something for this, spending almost 3 hours with me and my budget questions. So yay, Ben. I don't know how you survived. Must be coffee or something. August 16th, we had ULCT Legislative Policy Committee meeting, and I know one of the things that caught my attention in there is that they're looking for a rural community member on the drought response water collective working group. And one of the things that sounded interesting to me about that is that one of the things they're talking about is the need to have folks look at their general plan, and if they're growing, to take a look at their zoning and figure out if it takes into account how much water they have now and how much they think they're going to have in the years to come. So I thought it's great that's being looked at. I don't know if one of us should look into, being a rural person on that. But anyway, other interesting stuff that came up were just discussions about fireworks and short-term rentals, homelessness, and the Love, Listen, and Lead task force, which deals with law enforcement issues. We had our August 16th council budget and tax workshop. We had our EMS board meeting on August 17th, along with a workshop. It's like a mini retreat. And I'll just briefly say calls to EMS were down in July as they anticipated they might be, probably due to heat. But our numbers of calls are still up 25% from 2020. Exciting things we discussed were the new logo. You'll be seeing that soon. And we are experiencing some delays with the building. Some of it's due to product availability. So Andy, the director there, is working on an update for when they can move in. I was able to finally tour the building. Great things happening there. I encourage anyone who hasn't toured to get in touch with Andy about that. In our workshop, we were looking at dealing with some major issues over at EMS, one having to do with salaries, of course, going up around the state and the region. Our main competition is probably Grand Junction. Salaries are higher there, housing is lower. So you can start to imagine what that means. We're looking at how, if possible, we can raise wages. We also discussed an upcoming meeting that users of dispatch will be coming to the City Council and County Commission with, because there are some suggested changes and requests for improvements. And one of the last things that came up, just thinking about, as we look at funding for EMS, there are apparently still some legislators looking at making sure EMS agencies get a dedicated amount of the transient room tax, the TRT, in future. So for those of you watching the legislature, keep that in mind. August 17th and 18th, I was out filling sandbags for me and my in-laws, and I just want to thank the city for making all of that sand and the bags available. And thank you for the residents up on Hillside who showed me how the professionals fill a bag.
Most of those bags came from a coordinated effort. The mayor of Vineyard, Julie Former, my friend, texted and said, whoa, you guys have had some big storms. And between us and Mayor Miley Wilson of Cedar City, Mayor Fulmer was able to get all of the bags collated along the Wasatch Front and then ship them to both of us. So that was really a super network that happened to get those bags here.
And I know I'll regret offering it, but if somebody needs bags filled in the future, I'm fast, but it ain't pretty because I'm messy. And then finally went to the 3 different schools on various days for the clap-in to welcome students, which was great fun. And special thanks to EMS and NPS and the police department for attending. And my last thing was, I guess I was waiting to see if somebody else was going to bring it up, but I understand our attorney has given notice, and this is her last council meeting, and I just wanted to express my thanks. I just really am tremendously grateful for all of the research she's done, her responsiveness and quick turnaround, her participation in the legislative group to the city, and just so many of the issues she's helped us maneuver. And I had a card for you, Lori, but I didn't know if Lori wanted to say anything.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you. This is my last council meeting, and I appreciate your kind words. I love the city of Moab, and this has been my dream job. I am extremely proud of the work that I've done. I've had the opportunity to work on some of the toughest issues facing the city, and the city has been through a lot in the last few years. I'm really proud of the work that I did on the OHV noise issue. I know those were tough decisions, and they weren't great options, but I think the city went forward with the best that we could. And so
I would like to express my thanks for the opportunity to serve the city of Moab and its citizens. Just in recent months, it unfortunately has been clear to me that I cannot effectively serve the city of Moab any longer. I had raised concerns that I feel like were inadequately addressed, and so it's time to move on. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve. I value the friendships that I have made, and I will keep in touch, and I will not be a stranger. So thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Ronnie.
That was all I had for my meetings.
I was just going to mention that there's a website, when you were talking about the water, rural water, there's a website, drought.utah.gov. That's a really great resource. I was going to share it with you, Mike, but might as well share it with everyone. Also, there's a grumbling about the legislature changing how sales tax is collected and spent in the state. Right now, it's called the 50-50 split. The changes that they're looking at doing would drastically negatively impact our community and drastically reduce the amount of sales tax we would receive. So for those of you that are active with the legislature this coming winter in February, March, that's something that you really want to watch. Thank you, Ronnie. Tani?
Okay. Well, first I want to thank Mike for answering my Water 101 question. As I was driving to work at 6:30 last Wednesday morning, I drove past an alfalfa field, and it's pouring buckets of rain, and the sprinklers are going full blast. So I got an education about how Moab Irrigation Company works, and I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. Let's see, 8/12, I attended the Kenyonlands Healthcare Special Service District. They did have an employee test positive for COVID, so there were some restrictions in place, and they were on lockdown for a while. So far, all residents are COVID-free. There are 2 that are unvaccinated. One had a reaction to the first injection, and the other one was a new admit and should be okay for the vaccine. We reviewed the financial policies and procedures, ratified the bills, and reviewed the budget versus actuals. Their financial audit is ongoing, and we discussed a presentation for the I keep writing county council, it's county commission, for a funding request, and I just wondered if you all would be interested in seeing the presentation as far as from an information perspective, not necessarily that they would be coming to the city for funding. There was also some...
Do you want everybody to answer that?
Yeah, is that something you'd be interested in?
I would be. Yeah.
Okay. I will talk to the chair and see what we can set up.
I'll put it on our spreadsheet.
Okay. There was some fencing installed on the Park Drive walking and bike path to prevent vehicles from driving through the parcel. People were actually moving the boulders and pushing them out of the way with their vehicles to drive on that, and it was just not being utilized as it should have been. And let's see. On the 18th, I attended Moab Museum Board meeting. Utah Humanities and Department of Arts and Museums did a site visit. They wanted to learn about our transformation from the old museum to the new one. They were quite impressed with the state of our collections, the exhibits, and the steps that we've taken to raise the professional standards of the museum, and the work that we have engaged a professional conservator. They did encourage our staff to apply for operating and capital grants because they thought that we had taken the museum to the next step. The staff executive director will be serving on the conservation presentation team being forwarded by Utah Humanities. She will be able to highlight the museum's accomplishments and also mentor her peers. So that's a pretty impressive step because that's a statewide board that she will be on. And the assistant director will be taking a course in museum education and outreach, and that will help her understand more about informal learning that takes place in museums. And the BLM and the Department of the Interior site came to the site for a site review. This was to determine if Moab Museum was appropriate for the ancestral load basket that's been residing at the edge of the Cedars to be returned to us. And the way that they score museums is poor, fair, and good. And our museum scored fair, which means that we are worthy to display the ancestral load basket, which in the museum world is a big thing. Like I said, it has been at the edge of the Cedars since 2018. It is now safely ensconced in storage in our museum. It will be conserved and cleaned and returned to us. I think the date was the date we're aiming for is November 1st. And if the museum can upgrade their score to good, then it enables the museum to borrow more exhibits and exhibit more pieces. And there are only a few things that they need to do to get to that good level, and a lot of them are already in place or almost finished. And fortunately, that site visit was before the rainstorm caused some flooding inside the museum and damaged the HVAC system. And there was a leak, but it didn't damage any of the exhibits or any of the museum. It got the carpet wet, essentially. But the HVAC system is still not working because the parts have been lost over Kansas somewhere. So currently, if you go there, it is a very warm museum. Okay, and last Thursday, I went to the Housing Authority meeting. We discussed these things don't work with my speech. We discussed the county's desire to hire an executive director for the land trust and manage the development of Arroyo Crossing. Right now, it's just being done by a volunteer board, and it really needs to have an executive director. That position would be a county employee hired by the county and benefited. We also discussed a possible house donation. There are some people, some locals, that have a modest home, and they have discussed donating it to HASU as a rental house for a local employee. We discussed a little bit about who would be eligible, how we would decide who gets to live in that house, if it would, only be a family, or if two people could share the home. And there's always been in the plan an idea that part of the rent that they were charged would be put into an escrow account, and when they left, they would get that part of that rent payment back as a down payment for a permanent home. That still has not been finalized, but it's quite possible that the Housing Authority won't have this home for maybe 20 years. So that's still in process. And we talked about, we discussed the risk assessment like everybody else has, and discussed establishing an audit committee. And at Wingate Village, which is out south of town, some of the units that the Housing Authority is building are rental units. In total, there will be 22 units. 10 of those have been filled. And by the end of August, there should be 4 more that are ready to move in. When that portion of that development is complete, there will be 5 buildings, and this completes 2 of the buildings. And the Wingate Village Phase 3 in the self-help homes, the families are finishing up, and they should receive their certificates of occupancy. They should have received them last Thursday. and they should be signing their closing documents on 9/17. And hopefully, the first 9 homes in Arroyo Crossing will be closing in mid-September. And right now, HASU and the Land Trust are working with those buyers to educate them of the legal ramifications of the documents that they are signing, because they are a little bit complicated. And the board had a closed session, and I'm an ex officio, so I signed off at that point. I did have a phone call meeting with Patty Trapp and Marco De Leon of the National Park Service about the timed entrance to Arches pilot program, which was pretty interesting. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Tony. Karen?
I met with the Arches National Park Superintendent from the Office of Public Affairs. I had a brief introduction meeting with Mila Dunbar-Irwin in regards to her plan for introducing sustainability. I joined in on the tapping into federal funding, leveraging WaterSmart grants for innovative water infrastructure investments. I sent that information to Carla. I didn't know if you guys joined that or not. The webinar went over 5 different grants available starting October 5th. And WaterSmart is currently providing application support for agencies to get funding for planning or implementation projects that focus on sustainability and resilient water management. Past supported projects ran the gamut from rebates for fixtures to turf removal to interagency support for maintaining and repairing areas that are directly tied to water resource management. One of the interesting things was the interagency, which I know you've worked really hard on with GWISA and the Moab Irrigation Company, and so I'm curious if there's opportunities there for grant funding.
Oh, certainly. It was a really helpful email that you sent. I didn't listen to it, so I appreciated that you gave us a heads up.
Oh yeah, and it's recorded, and there's a wealth of information because there's some really decent funding opportunities. There's some matching grants, and some are 50%, some are at 75 to 25%. So, and then I wanted to give a quick recap. Some of you know that I was the chair of the Census Committee in 2020, and there were some very interesting data points that came out on August 13th. The state population numbers for Utah is 3,271,616 residents for 2020. In Grand County, we saw a 4.8% change in population growth from 9,225 residents in 2010 to 9,669 residents in 20. 91.8% of our housing in the state of Utah is occupied by full-time residents. In Grand County, our occupancy rate is at 77%. We have 5,192 housing units in Grand County, and 4,006 are occupied with full-time residents, which leaves 1,186 unoccupied houses, which would equate to either second homes or overnight rentals. And the largest ethnicity group in our community was as identified as Hispanic and Latino at 12.7%. So some good information is coming out, and I know right now it's being used for redistricting information. So just wanted to share that, and that is all I have.
Thanks, Karen. And thanks for chairing that group.
I attended a travel council meeting. Dr. Freeman presented to the travel council on the streetlights program study and appealed for funding, since we had requested that he approach the county, and he's approached the travel council. And it seemed like They had questions about whether or not it was duplicative of information that they already gathered, and at the end of the item, they had more questions than answers, so they tabled it, but his deadline for getting the match for his funding, one of his funding sources, is coming up. So I'm not sure if whose ball at this point that this will, whose court this will fall in, city, county commission, or the travel council, and how to respond in a timely fashion. So I don't know if he needs help navigating the personalities and processes of the local government. And then a couple of other people came with funding requests. A couple looking to do concert promotion starting next year. And also the Moab Folk Festival looking for help buying a portable stage to replace their homemade one, which is difficult to deploy. This would be a professional one, which is much faster and easier and requires less people to set up and take down. So we may be hearing about that as well, because it's kind of expensive. And then I attended a solid waste special service district meeting, and we saw our first rolled up financial statement after the merger, so that was good to see. It seems like it's meeting the projections for realizing synergies between the two organizations. So, and in terms of statistics, the middle school demo created a lot of additional revenue and a big spike in construction and demolition debris going to the Moab landfill. And apparently the Super 8 is embarking on a massive gutting and renovation. So interesting what you learn in the context of solid waste. We also discussed possible changes to our COVID-19 vaccination encouragement policy in light of the full approval by the FDA of the Pfizer vaccine. It was inconclusive, but interesting discussion. I attended a Moab Dark Skies meeting. They've relaunched their website. It's moabdarkskies.com, and it has information and application for the Residential Outdoor Lighting Retrofit Assistance Program and the Friend of the Milky Way Business Program. I also attended the Congressman Curtis Town Hall, and I too met with the Superintendent Patty Trapp to discuss congestion and visitor experience issues, especially at Arches National Park, and they've been busy doing more data collection. And we talked about their plans for public engagement this fall, and how to best get the information out to the community and get feedback. That's what I've got.
Thanks, Kaylin. Okay, we are now moving on to section 6, approval of the minutes. We've got minutes from August 4th, August 6th, August 10th, and August 16th. Is there a motion?
I will move to approve all four for August 4th, 6th, 10th, and 16th.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tawny. Discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We're now in old business. 7-1, proposed resolution 22-2021, a resolution adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget and proposed property tax increase for the city of Moab. So council, I'll turn this over to you for deliberation, and I am open to a motion at any time.
I'll start. I move to adopt resolution 22-2021, a resolution adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget under scenario 3 as presented, which adopts a property tax revenue of $1.5 million and approve Form PT 800 instituting a property tax levy of 1.671 mils.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second to that motion? That motion dies with no second, but I am open to staying on this agenda item and entertaining other motions or deliberation of this council.
Mayor, I can go ahead. I've thought a lot about what Kalen said at our last meeting, and I agree with him. I don't want to punt this down the road, but at this point, I am going to vote for a zero property tax, not because I feel like a compelling argument has been made that it is not needed. There will always be issues with people living on fixed incomes, with single parents, renters and landlords that have to increase or don't increase their rents to cover their own expenses. There will always be small businesses that aren't able to absorb those costs, as well as larger businesses. Those arguments will always be there. There will never be a good time to increase the property tax. We have talked a lot about misinformation and poor messaging and poor PR and misunderstanding and a myriad of items that don't really have to do with taxes. The discussion has devolved and it's become ugly and divisive, and it's turned into name calling and bullying. It isn't acceptable to come yell at the mayor and call her names. It just isn't. We teach our children in elementary school that bullying and violence and threatening behavior isn't right. It's considered a hostile environment in both the public sector and the private sector. We have to have classes every year to teach adults not to harass and discriminate and bully. It's not acceptable to treat your elected officials in a hostile manner or our staff. There are 3 of us that are sitting here that have been here for 5.5 years. The other 3 have been here for about 3.5. Everything bad that has happened in Moab didn't just happen in those 5.5 years. There was a lot of good that was done prior to all of us sitting on this council. We've done a lot of good, and good will continue in the future, but not if we do not reset ourselves as a community and begin to speak again civilly to one another and kindly. I am hoping that if I vote no, this will give us a chance for a pause and a reset, that regardless of who sits in these chairs, that we can engage civilly again with purpose and with function. So, having said that, I move to adopt Resolution 2221, a resolution adopting the fiscal year 2021-22 budget under Scenario 1. As presented, which adopts no property tax. And I think I just end there, don't I?
Okay. Yes. Is there a second?
I'll second, but can we have a little more time for anybody who hasn't spoken?
Oh, definitely. We will move into discussion at that point. So a second from Ronnie and discussion.
I'll know if someone else wants to go first.
I'll go.
Okay.
I would just also like to say that bullying exists right at this dais as well, and it is completely unacceptable. And so I would just like to say that it's not just coming from residents. We've been asked by citizens to get creative and tighten our own belts, be specific, transparent, and get very, very clear about what we are offering to residents with a property tax increase. We have not accomplished that. I have heard that we would use property tax for sustainability, transit, police, infrastructure, and increasing staff. The truth is it can be used on all of those things, and because it goes into the general fund and it goes into an unrestricted line item, that it is going to be determinant on how we use those taxes every year with the approval of City Council. I cannot, at this time, endorse a property tax. I want to assure all of the people who have emailed us and the people who have had the courage to come forward that I share the same frustrations as you regarding how things are run at City Hall right now, and I take ownership for my responsibility in this, and I assure you that I've been asking hard questions, and I will continue to do so until the end of my term. Yeah, I can't justify a property tax to residents when we don't have our priorities straight here at City Hall. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Karen.
You want to go next, Ronnie?
Oh, well, I realize we are discussing the property tax and the percentage, but we're also discussing the budget. So I, obnoxious budget detail person that I am, just want to make sure I am clear as unusually clear mud on just a few questions. So I guess this is coming your way, Ben and Joel. I just wanted to be clear. I think my memory's a little sketchy, but I want to think that when we had the August 16th meeting, maybe we were talking about the $400,000 potentially paving of the Mini Lee, Emma, the part that the city will have to cover. And in my memory, when we voted on that, you know, we had discussions about how that paving, I know it's separate from the hotspot parking, was ranked relatively low on our capital improvements index, and that that we'd be coming back to revisiting the ranking. And I didn't have time to review all of our meetings where it came up, but I'm not sure that we did review the ranking. So I just want to get clear so I understand with this budget. In this budget, are we committing $400,000 to it? Because in my mind, somewhere in the past, we had discussions like, okay, we understand hotspot funds are available for dispersed parking, but you won't do that unless we do the paving. But there are scenarios where we may not have the money to do the paving, so that's going to have to wait. And that was the last conversation I remembered. But again, I'm still looking back through recordings. I wanted to get clear. Was it you guys' understanding that in this budget we're committing to do it in the next 12 months?
Yes, the money is budgeted for the Emma project as a part of completing the widening and the bike path connection.
Okay, I guess I'm just going to say my part on that, and I don't know if anybody feels that strongly about it, but, and again, this may just be at the next meeting that I just need someone to find the meeting for me where we revisited, because the last one I could find, you know, we discussed that we did consider that relatively low priority compared to some other things, and that we would be coming back to it before we made a commitment. So I just can't find the connection where we really did that. But again, I admit I'm overwhelmed and somewhat forgetful. So,
Ronnie, we can bring that back to you. And
yeah.
Even though the $400,000 is for the Emma project is in the budget, prior to that money being approved and spent on that project, that would come back to you again for approval again.
Okay.
So it's not the last, by committing them funds to that project tonight, it does not approve, and that project will not just be green light from that point and be completed. You'll see that again, and we can bring you the info.
Okay, thanks for explaining that, because I was uncomfortable just having that last memory of like, I think we were gonna, you know, come back and really commit to this before we committed. So, okay.
Ronnie, would it be okay just to expand a little further about how we're revisiting, just logistically revisiting the capital improvements project? Because we've, you know, opened that up, and that would be helpful for this council to kind of have the framework.
So we have a capital improvements project list that we bring to the council, where we rank and bring that forward for approval to this council. We try and do it annually. So things have been off a little bit this year. So we normally try and do that around the same budget cycle. We normally do that in May. So we can bring that again prior to obviously spending any of these funds that are part of this budget.
Okay, cool. And at that time, can I just make a request? Because we've had several residents ask, oh, I don't really understand the title of this item. And, I tend to forget too, right? Like we all have catchphrases for them on the list, but then, sometimes time passes and you forget. Is it possible when we do the list to have like a little extra bar on the table, just to kind of a narrative to explain to people, this is what this project would do? Because I think it makes it hard for people to understand. Is this a need or not? And then maybe just a reminder for people about the capital improvements matrix and how that worked. And I'm sure we all have to revisit it, but it wasn't just that stuff was pulled from the sky, but we may want to revisit the way those things ranked anyway, sounds like. Okay, let's see. Okay, and then I'm just going to apologize, Ben, because I think I'm daft, but can you explain to me one more time, just maybe dumb it down for me, and this might hate you too, Carly, I think it's 58,000 and not 73, 58,000 in soft costs in the coming year for the pilot shuttle project is going to be broken out, only because when I looked at the budget, I got confused because I was looking at, I think, what was I looking at? Oh, crap. A certain amount of overhead, and then also, I think when I did the math, I thought it would be like 35,000 that we talked in the last meeting about putting in the budget, and then it wasn't that different, but it was 37.5. So can you guys just walk me through that one more time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so the infrastructure costs were removed, and so with that, the only remaining component that was unanswered was the overhead estimates. So our internal costs, our internal overhead costs, and the study that Fair and Pierce did on that used an estimate, wasn't using actual salaries, wasn't using actual allocation percentages. And so what we did in the creation of this final budget proposal was estimate times from 5 positions, assistant city engineer, communications director, city attorney, and assistant city manager, and the hours that would be spent on that project upfront and on an annual ongoing basis. And so to answer your question, what we did was essentially kind of start over. We did use the marketing costs, and there was one other component that was used from the Fair and Pierce study, simply because we didn't have a better estimate than they did, but we did update those overhead costs. And there was also some confusion regarding the amounts because the Fair and Pierce study estimated those costs on a calendar year as opposed to our fiscal year. And so a lot of the costs were cut in half. The county's contribution was divided over that 5-year period. Instead of recognizing that all up front, we're recognizing $50,000 every year. And yeah, does that wrap up any other questions on that?
I may come see you again, but hopefully it won't be 3 hours. Okay, and then the only other thing that was confusing me was when I look at the RAP taxes, and sorry, I've got way too many stacks of paper here. So in our budget under revenue, we have our line item for $319,000. But I got a little bit confused in the memo because the memo talks about, a 3.3% increase, I think, to make up, well, you can explain it again, but to make up for that initially not being there. So then all of a sudden I got myself confused and I'm like, wait, if we put 3.3% in across the board for it, and we also have a line item that says 319,000, do we actually have it in there twice, or am I mixing apples and oranges?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
happy to explain that. So in the memo, what the memo represents is the changes from the tentative budget to the final budget.
Okay.
So in the tentative budget, we did have that $320,000 allocated, budgeted as RAP tax revenue. What we omitted from that budget was the restriction on those funds. And so essentially we had 2 options at that point. We could look at the revenue and how it was budgeted, if it was budgeted conservatively enough that we could increase that to make up for that lack of restriction, or we could go into the general fund expenses and start carving things out to get down to the $320,000. When looking at the budgeted revenue and what the actual revenue has been for the last 6 months, we felt like it was conservative enough that we could increase the budgeted sales tax revenue line items to make up that difference. So it was a modest increase that you referenced, 3.3%. And by doing that, we were able to then allocate those RAP tax funds to a restricted account so that they would be set aside for future disbursement.
Okay, I'll ask one more time and then I'll, I apologize because I think I have some kind of selective dyslexia, but so, when I look under the general fund, under the third line, under revenue and taxes, the RAP taxes, it shows, income of $319,000. So I think it just confused me because there was a line item there and I was thinking, oh, but we already gave everything a 3.3 bump. So does the 3.3% bump that everybody else under sales tax got, is that supposed to make up for the 319,000? And then, is it duplicating itself because the 319,000 is in there as well? Sorry, I don't know if that makes sense.
Let's see. How can I explain this differently?
That's okay.
So,
I will add it to my my other half-hour appointment. We don't have to go through here.
It's simply that we had to increase the other sales tax revenues in order to say, okay, we need to allocate the $320,000 to a restricted account because that wasn't done in the tentative budget.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm sure, I don't know if anybody else has budget questions, but I had a few comments about property tax, and as people probably know, I've I think I've been consistent since the 10th of August that I felt like, and I took responsibility for being a little distracted by some family demands this spring and summer. But I from the beginning felt like, this was an educational opportunity for us because the city hasn't had a property tax over 0% in decades. And because we now seem to come down to being the only community in Utah, and when we started in the spring, we were one of a few, in my understanding, that didn't have one. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is my understanding in most other parts of the United States, when you get your property tax bill, it comes from the county you live in, but there are usually a bunch of lines that have to do with county services. And then there's at least one line, maybe more, having to do with city services. And so, along the lines of what Tawny and Karen said, I'm hoping that part of what we can all work on collectively is not only some more professionalism and mutual respect when we have conversations, but then also to get past some of the stuff that's been discussed that just isn't true. So somebody can check that for me, but I do think it's pretty darn common that you pay to your county and your city as well. So I do feel like there's a myth out there that this is some crazy thing that we've come up with. And I just thought, those are the things I would like to work with the community over the coming year, because I feel like we have a lot of work to do to understand. There are a lot of ideas about what the city can do, and I think we definitely owe it to all of you to look at what expenses we could cut and what other revenues we can look into, and what other funding opportunities, what might be available outside. Karen, for example, is really good at, finding grant opportunities, and a lot of the staff have been doing that as well. And I also think another thing that we really owe it to ourselves and each other to do is to look at what tourism realistically can pay for, because I think there's kind of a misconception that we get tons and tons of money coming into the city that could pay for everything 5 times over. And maybe you guys can help us figure out the best way to kind of explain what does come in and what that will cover. But there are certain things that it will never be enough to cover. So I would like to kind of commit to this group that I'm interested. I've talked for a long time about how I thought the city would benefit by meeting with the county and understanding each other's budgets better so we can figure out how to support each other. Because I do feel like if we all understood their budget a bit better, some of the conversations about, just pass this on to the county, have they pay for it, or the county telling us, you guys need to pay for this. We could figure out where we can help each other and we can pay for things, but we could also figure out where that just doesn't work in Utah. It's not allowed. But so I think there's definitely opportunities for collaboration, but I feel like we all owe that to each other. But I do feel like there are a lot of moving parts here and a lot of accusations that have been made. One of my favorite ones is that the people sitting here with me keep building hotels when these are the people who actually stop that happening in city limits. So I'm just asking people to please spend a little time learning the truth. Don't believe everything you read on Facebook. And I think if we do that together, we can definitely work as the community that so many people have asked, the effort that people have asked for. My concern is that our responsibility here, and I feel like part of what you elected us to do, is to tell you the truth and not necessarily something glossed over that we might all want to hear so we can sleep better. And what appears to be the truth to me is that property tax or no property tax, Moab is getting more and more expensive, and it is harder and harder for all of us to live here, and that is really, really scary. And I feel like if we all commit to working together to better understand where we are, we can figure out what is increasing that's beyond our control. For example, the state requires Grand County to reassess our properties once every 5 years, and that is based in part on what's happening around us. And you'll notice sometimes if you look at your property valuation, it's lower than what you'd think market value will be. Well, the state says, if you guys don't reassess every 5 years, we're gonna come down and we're gonna make everything market value, so we'd all pay even more. So how much our property tax is going up, at least on the county lines, and if the city added a property tax to the city line, is beyond our control under state law. That's just gonna keep going up. So we all collectively need to understand that, but then we can also talk about tools of what, if anything, can a community do to try and keep that from rising as much. And I think that there is some opportunity to discuss things like, okay, well, my property tax is going up a lot because of all of these new builds and expensive builds around me. Are there things we could do with planning and zoning, for example, to promote housing for primary residents that would mean, okay, property doesn't sell for as much here, but it also means then relatively your property taxes aren't going to go up so much. So again, I feel like without going on too long, I would like to commit to more conversations with the county, but then also a public effort and using Ben's skills, because as I understand it, part of the reason we hired a finance director is to do some long-term financial planning. And I feel like that effort, especially if we commit to it in the next, Ben can tell us how many months that will take, but if we prioritize it, can help us all understand what's coming at us that we can't control and we have to plan for, and what support we can offer those of us who are not even going to be able to afford that, and then what we can't. There are other things affecting this whole amoeba or bubble that we need to look at too. We talk about, for example, CIB funds and Community Impact Board, is that right? And how traditionally that has helped communities, rural communities especially, pay for a lot of larger infrastructure, but it's been very, very hard to get those funds over the past few years. And some of you probably know the CIB has been under investigation with some allegations that they've been putting money where it doesn't belong. And I think it's incumbent on us to make that part of the discussion and understand what's happening, because if that is true, it's keeping a lot of money from going to communities and paying for things that it's supposed to help pay for. And some of those are the big cost items that we're at a loss for without. So read up on CIB and we'll try and find a way to make it digestible. But other things are going on, like some of you probably read the recent article, now I'm forgetting if it was in the Sun News or the Times Independent, I think it was the Times Independent, about Senator Lee working on getting more PILT funds. Those are payment in lieu of taxes funds. As I understand it, it's like the money communities are supposed to get to help make up for the fact that some of us have so much more public lands than other places, and so it's supposed to help make up for that. But it's kind of become a joke in years past because you get so few pennies on the dollar, it really is meaningless. So Senator Lee is working on trying to increase the amount of PILT that communities get. And granted, I don't think that traditionally comes to cities, but it goes to counties. And that's important to understand because some of the county funds the city has traditionally gotten maybe to help us, I think, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I think with the MRAC, with the pool, and I know, remember, there's something else I'm forgetting. Maybe the school district sometimes gets some of those. Forget who gets what. But that can impact the county's ability to give us some of the historic funds they've given us. And so that, for example, is something that we should be working on in our legislative effort to help support Senator Lee with. There's a lot more I could say, but I think I'll spare you all because sometimes I hope I will write this stuff down so it will be more coherent, but it just isn't because I don't know, I'm tired. So with that, I do support no property tax this year. I do think that it's our obligation to have kind of a teach-in for all of us over the next 6 months about where we're headed and what we can influence and how we can help each other. And I'm not going to be a Pollyanna. I think there is probably some scenario where one might look at a property tax. I mean, we are the only ones in Utah without one. But next year is going to be, frankly, hell for all of us because the county will be reassessing city property. So we're all going to see a big bump in our bills. So again, I think we have to have that conversation and we have to figure out, and a lot of you have talked to us about needs versus wants, and so we'll have that conversation again. We're looking at consultants now for visioning, and that's a part of, some of these things, and, the things the city proposed spending this on. I mean, I know some people say, we don't want more cops, but honestly, a lot of constituents have asked for more or more, traffic enforcement presence. So I think this will give us the time to have those discussions about what, how much law enforcement can tourism pay for? What kinds of enforcement can you have? And we got the useful update from the chief tonight about progress on officers. But I think this process will clarify a lot of misunderstanding about some of the options people think we have with housing, because we definitely have options and ideas, but some things that just aren't on the table. And I hate to waste people's time and money. And I feel like we can have more quality conversation if we all start with what we can do instead of getting distracted by what we can't. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ronnie. Mike, did you want to share a few words?
Yeah, I do support Tony's motion for a zero rate. I was holding out for the 1 million, which is the smallest of the 4 levels on the grounds, that it was supposed to be small compared to the county taxes that you would pay. I think that Moab will always be in a situation where, with the sales taxes from visitors, that'll fund the great bulk of what's just much like it's been doing for the last 30 years. So people complain about how this was just a foot in the door and it was going to get worse. I don't think it needs to get worse. I don't think it should get worse because, as I say, we have sales taxes unusually among towns in Utah to mitigate that off. And having said all that, I agree with Karen that the city did not do a good job of specifying exactly what sort of capital improvement projects we wanted to do. I mean, there was a long list of them, but what we failed to get across was how it was critical that they get started now. For example, people just flat didn't get excited about particular projects. Cane Creek Boulevard is one, for example. Our engineer will tell you that it really does need work and new water pipes and all that kind of good stuff. But most of us, at a time when we're worried about COVID and and a number of other things, everybody's kind of freaked out. So that's what I ran across by and large, is everybody said the timing is really poor. And that finally kind of swayed me into abandoning my $1 million position and supporting the zero. And having said all that, I do think I think there is a place for a property tax. It is not going to go away, folks, because I happened to talk to 2 of our mayoral, thank you, yeah, candidates, and both of them said, yeah, I think there's a place to do it too. So even if we vote it down tonight, it's going to come back up again, and it needs to, because frankly, property tax owners should foot the bill. And I personally don't, and self-disclosure here, I own 1 house and I do not rent it out. That's all I've ever had. So I don't get into long-term renting and so forth. And I'm not disputing that it's not an income source. But people who are fortunate enough to own homes, and it's the renters who are paying very high prices for renting, you could do the town a favor by not passing on some or all of that property tax to your renters. It would be a courteous thing to do, and it would help keep the price of housing down a little bit, and still come off very well. That's what I'm trying to say. So there's that. A number of people have suggested that we cut the city's staff expenses and so forth, and it sounds great, but it's not so easy to do. The reason that we've ramped up is we went through, as Tani and Kaylin have pointed out, and Ronnie as well, pretty bad city managers for a while. And when David Everett came on, he hired more people to raise the professionalism of the staff, and it took increases in salaries to get those people here. And I am grateful to have them, because I can tell you guys that it's been delightful by and large to work with all of these folks. And I do not think that we can go back to the pecunious, if you will, staffing levels that we had before. So we could, I mean, it would necessitate, you either got to wait for people to retire or move away or leave their jobs for some reason. But I would be loath to consider laying off top-level staff just to, I mean, that would be a really hard place to go. We could talk a little bit about, maybe about, you guys aren't going to particularly want to hear this, nor are we, because we're on the same program. My understanding is the city has pretty generous health care benefits, and that's a great thing. A lot of companies don't offer that good of health benefits and so forth. So we could talk about reducing slightly the city's contribution to it, and health care is so expensive that might generate, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. I don't know what the number would be, but it would help provide money somewhere else, and the city's staff would still enjoy rather robust benefits. So there you go, but I'm happy to put it off for a year or two. We have ARPA funding coming in that will help. RAP tax is coming in. So I don't think it's the end of the world either way. I think we will all survive, and it still is a small town. That's one of the great things I love about Moab is running into future city council candidates and future mayoral candidates at the grocery store. So see if we can't kind of keep it all together here and all work for the same common goal. But I'm comfortable putting this off for a year or two. Not bad. That's it.
Thank you, Mike.
Ben, would you mind if I quoted a short excerpt from one of our email exchanges? I don't think, nothing to worry about.
Yep, no, fine.
So I do think this is the time for possibly a very small property tax increase. I think we have all been looking at the city's budget in detail for years, and we've all talked about the specifics of that and made many arguments. So I just want to point out one thing. Because the county reassessed in Spanish Valley, the relative value of city properties has decreased this year. Quote, city property owners will pay less this year than last if Moab City were to leave the rate at zero. The break-even point is $360,000. If the city adopted a property tax rate to raise $360,000, property tax bills in the city would not increase from the prior year, even taking the school district's increase into account if they pass their proposed increase. So I think this is, in fact, perhaps the best year to pass a small property tax of $360,000. I realize that so far in this discussion, it appears that I'm the minority, but a lot of time and effectively money has been invested in moving this far. And so I request that one of you amend your motion to the small amount of $360,000.
Tani, it was your motion, and Ronnie, it was your second.
I think I'm okay to leave it where it is.
sorry, leave it where it is the zero?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that was the original motion, so I don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may, one of the most glaring discrepancies that I've seen through this process is that the community seems to be really upset about salaries and benefits. And I would like at a future meeting to be able to just be as transparent as possible and get HR to explain how rate, what do you call it, raises happen and perhaps even look at, I don't know what the last time a health evaluation was done with a health insurance company, but I think it would benefit us to actually be as open about what we are paying people as possible, because every time it comes around for us during budget time, we get really quiet. And my first year, Mike and I didn't know about cola. I will never drink that soda again. It blew up because it was a question of, why are we doing an automatic COLA increase? I was educated about that, and I do support it. But there is, I think there's a real benefit to have a discussion, especially, I think there's frustration with the city council that we are overspending. And there's also frustration at the county level. We have no control of that, but I know that they are going through a salary evaluation soon, and there's mention that there could be a $1.5 million increase in wages at the county as well. So, just having that discussion, and maybe it would encourage more local recruitment, because we have a lot of talented people who are living in our community, and it could potentially help.
I spoke with HR on Friday and was told that they have a salary survey that is almost complete. It will be coming to us in the very near future. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, isn't healthcare negotiated every open enrollment in November?
We will be negotiating the
Okay.
healthcare benefit this year.
So it seems to me, to just follow up with what you're saying, maybe we should have a salary and benefits, including healthcare workshop in one of our, maybe prior to, as a workshop, one of our next couple of meetings. Because just because we're passing a budget at a certain amount, it doesn't mean that we can't readjust things as the council can readjust certain things at any time, regardless of whether or not we're in budget season.
That is correct.
So would that be the favor of this council to do that? And would you like to do it sooner than later? Do you want to save it for October, or?
I'd rather save it for the new council. I feel like we've already spent a lot of time on property tax. We've approved this salary schedule this year on a regular schedule. I think there'll be some incoming folks that will be in the same position where it's a lot to absorb, and I think it would be a better use of staff time to have
prepare
that
for
dialogue.
a January meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Because then whoever's elected has to attend. Is that okay with all of you?
Yeah, I was just thinking
Okay.
in the interim, because it'll take a little while. It sounds like the updated salary survey is coming, but just to remind people, these salaries didn't come out of the ether. I mean, there was a salary survey. Now, you guys can remind me, I'm forgetting if it was 2016 or 2017, that compared a lot of communities. So maybe for now, for people, I mean, it's available on the website, but it might be a little hard to find, so we can just, put a pointer so people can find that one to see, at least that for now.
Well, and
Yeah.
we did put some salary information in the workshop packet. So put it on the webpage. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's the best place, but, as I recall, and I've looked the survey back up again, both the final that we got from the consultants, but I think we had a lot of presentations and charts at the time that kind of showed, how we compared to other communities, and where we were high and where we were low. And, it seemed like, if I recall right, we were low, particularly on the starting end for people. And this is all, housing cost aside. But I just thought, if there are people who are interested, I don't know the best place to point to it, but
Well, the
and
salary
maybe
survey
Lisa
and the
has some
range.
idea. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
because I just think the research that went into the document, it was helpful to look at because it explains kind of process and that it's not juju. It was
Yeah, sort of as a link to our to where we're putting all things budget.
And, maybe you could put an announcement in there too, that the salary survey is, being redone, but for now, if you want to look at the last one, this is.
Did you hear that, Lisa, too? Okay. Okay.
Wait, I'm a little confused. So the county is doing their salary survey. Is the city redoing theirs?
That was,
Yes,
that
we're in
was,
the process
yeah.
of doing one as well.
I don't think it's that same whole entire process that we went through. From what I understand, it's a little more condensed because we have that data from the first one.
I'd like to ask this council, are there other items that were brought up in discussion as we've been talking about property tax, as we've been looking at our budget more closely and looking at expenses? So are there other items that you'd like to identify, whether it's now or the next council in January? Karen?
I personally would love to see less of the enterprise funds go to administration and actually have it go to capital projects.
So reducing the rate?
Yes, and I don't know, I mean, I didn't have time to call up other cities and see what rates there are, but it just, again, I mean, the explanation was, it wasn't 100% clear for me, and I feel like we were making a priority decision, and again, if capital improvement projects is the critical issue, then we need to put our money where our mouth is, and the budget is showing something different, so.
It's probably something we want to do a workshop on to go through how that functions, because right now, without a property tax, your pot is what your pot is, and if you lower those rates and move that money that's currently coming out of those funds to go pay for a capital improvement project, then general funds that are currently being used for something else have to go to cover those costs that they're covering for those departments. And then you're just shifting where that cost is coming from. Right now, if you left it the exact same way that it is, the money that's in the general fund could be used towards that capital project. If you change those rates down and that money comes out of that office to go towards that, now the money that was in the general fund that was being used for that before.
So basically, it's the same pot of money.
Absolutely.
But
We can have a capital,
regardless,
we can
let's
have
go
a,
ahead and have that be
Yeah.
a topic when we talk about salaries. I mean, because that's connected. It's not so much about what is paid, but it's how it's paid. And what I heard from that discussion is that if we paid less through enterprise funds, maybe our rates would go down.
I
Right?
don't think that's an
No?
option.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
yeah.
the workload and the improvements are the same. And the amount of paperwork that has to go through to do billing for water and sewer remains the same. How we're funding that gets paid for doesn't change that. So if you pull the money the money's currently coming out of those enterprise funds to pay those employees to do that work. If you pull that money out by changing those rates, then those employees still have to do that work. It doesn't go away. So now we just pull money out of the general fund to compensate for the money you just pulled out that's going now towards a capital project over here. If you just leave it the way that it is, the money that's in the general fund, you're shifting all around to make that happen, can just go to the capital project. The workload's the same. Who's paying for it, where it's coming from. And the work truly is water and sewer's workload. They're not doing it for the city hall, the general fund aspect of it. They are doing it for water and sewer services.
So then
that's why it gets paid out of it.
maybe we have this conversation when we're talking about projects then. But I think what Karen is saying is that let's have this conversation.
And one last thing, so we were asked by constituents to try to find other alternatives, and I was looking through Part 22, local option sales and use taxes for the Transportation Act, and allowable uses, and this is what it was so convoluted, I didn't know if we can do this because I think you have to have a county transportation commission, or I was very unclear, so maybe you guys know, but it showed in section 59, 12, 22, 22.12.2, allowable uses of local option sales and use tax revenue. We may expend the revenue generated from local option sales and use tax for the following purposes for Class A, B, C, and D roads for traffic, pedestrian safety, infrastructure, corridor preservation, and debt service obligations, multimodal transportation, and a transit system. So if that really is the case, that could potentially open revenue streams up where that, again, I think our sales and use taxes is 80% being paid by visitors. This seems...
Yeah. Ben, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, I think I have section 22 of the sales tax code about memorized. So 2212.2 is money that's currently going to the Class C fund. So we have two components, two revenue sources in the Class C fund. It's the highway tax and the B&C road funds that are received every other month. So that money is currently being used for Class C road funds. There are, when it comes to the transportation taxes, I've been reading the tax code more than I ever care to. It's maybe a future discussion that we have. There are a couple other options that, as far as the usage of funds and revenue sources available, I'm happy to share that with the council. I don't think tonight's probably the right setting for that, but there are a few different arrangements that can happen with the transportation sales taxes.
And is that at 0.25% or at 0.30%? That's what there was two different numbers and I didn't understand the difference.
So there are 7 different transportation sales taxes. So we are currently taking advantage of 2 of those. Highway tax goes to the Class C road fund, and one other is unrestricted, so it goes to the general fund. There are 5 others, only 2 of which would be applicable to the city as available options. One of which is currently being used already. It's just the allocation between the city and the county, the relationship that exists there. So the other one that's remaining would be 0.25%. Would be still available if the council wanted to consider pursuing that.
Okay. You guys can do that next year.
Yes, there's some deadlines next year for all that.
Can I just ask Joel and Ben, I mean, is it a cuckoo idea or, would it be a good priority in coming months to try to generate some of this long-term financial planning stuff to help? Does that tend to help guide one, or?
So my plan has been to, as we move out of the budget season, which has gone longer this year than typically does, as we move into the fall, this is typically the time when the finance department moves into the audit season, as well as preparing for the next budget season. So, as we've discussed my role in my hiring process, we talked about long-term financial planning and the priority of that. And I did state that that's, definitely high on my list, that we do some long-term financial modeling and see what the city looks like on a long-term basis. So prior to any strategic planning for the fiscal year 23 budget, that's kind of scary to say, but we definitely will be addressing, the staff will be ready to discuss long-term financial planning this fall.
I'm just making sure that, I'm not out on a limb here and that's something other people are interested in.
I
You
won't
guys?
be here, but I would be very interested. I'll be watching.
How about those of you who will still be here? Or Mike, if he has an opinion.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes? Or?
Sure, I'm especially interested in the vote at this point of the matter on the table.
Okay, well, I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to speak, so. And I wanted to make sure that before we get a vote, that we, identify and address next steps to have time to talk about the things that came up during this conversation so that we can respond in a way that is, responsible and thoughtful. So anything else?
So to clarify for me, so we had Tony's motion, then Kalen suggested an amendment, or it's gone now? Or?
So the motion that's on the table is Tawny's motion and seconded by Ronnie, and that is the scenario 1 of 0 property tax revenue, 0 mills levied.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So that's what's on the table. And if there's no other discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye, although do I need a roll call vote since this is a fiscal? Yes. Okay, so roll call vote. Kaylin?
No.
Karen?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. And we're moving on in our agenda. And I'm just going to let folks shuffle out that we're staying for the conversation. And if anybody's in the hallway, there are more seats. Okay, then we're moving on to section 8 of our agenda, new business. 8.1, proposed resolution 29-2021, a resolution approving the record of survey amendment for property located at 500 South Main Street, Moab, type 4532. I did not ask for a presentation for this agenda item. I would entertain a motion, but I'd also entertain questions for staff.
I have one quick question. I did put a question on the shared document, Corey, but I think it went to the black hole of cyberspace. What is the normal reason, or why would a property owner opt to do this?
In this scenario, the lot lines that were historic were set in a way that developing the property in conformity, so the current use that's on there was developed too close to the property line. So there's restrictions in being able to redevelop the current use that's already on there, use and structure, and then also moving forward to redevelop the northern parcel. So in this scenario, 4 parcels that are owned by a single property owner being consolidated to 2 to operate in compliance and being able to use going forward.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
I just have one question, Corey, and this
Yeah.
is for the person who wrote me today, and I think I know the answer, but I'm just going to have you confirm it as the expert. I did have someone ask me, and I saw that they want to take lot 1 and change the use, and then the second lot will probably sit there for a while. But a person asked me, "Oh, is this going to be another hotel?" And I'm like, I think we're done with that. But I just wanted an update from you. Do you know? Do we have any hotels that were vested that haven't started construction yet?
There's one in discussion. It was one property that was annexed into the city that was coordinated with the county, so that entitlement transferred through. But that's the only one.
Not this property. And,
outside of the Henry Shaw, which is a vested entitled property, but is being renegotiated.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
I move to approve Resolution 29-2021, resolution approving the record of survey amendment for property located at 500 South Main Street, Moab, Utah, 84532.
Thank you for that motion, Kaylin. Thank you for the second, Tawny. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
8.2, low-income housing water assistance program.
the LIWAP. LIWAP.
Low income housing.
My
voice carries somewhere, so you might want to turn the mic down. If I stand too close to him, I'm really going to blow eardrums.
Again, Marcy's here to answer any questions. I would entertain a motion or conversation and questions for Marcy.
All that we're doing tonight is just approving if we want to participate in this
Yes.
particular program, and finalized documents will come to us at a different time.
Yes, unless we believe they need to come to you guys. We just want to make sure, and I apologize for the confusion on that, we want to make sure that you guys are okay with us moving forward with the program to help low-income families. I feel like it's a great program that will be beneficial to our low-income families. It's a federal program that is temporary right now with the tendency of it continuing based on funding. This is their pilot program. They're looking at potentially passing past 2 years if they show that the nation needs this assistance, and we honestly believe they do. We see it in our community big time, especially working in the water department, or in the treasurer's department. We see the need within the community. So this program coming about was huge. And I think it's gonna be a great, and funding is supposed to roll out October 30th.
Is it just drinking water? It's not stormwater and sewer?
It will include all. I did ask for clarification on that. So because we bill out water, sewer, garbage recycling, and stormwater, if those funds are required to be paid for in order for their water to be turned back on or services to be continued, they will pay for it. So although it's saying it's in a water assistant program, it is including any type of waste. So that's garbage and sewer, and it will also, any termination fees, late fees, it will cover all of that. The program is a lot like the heat assistant program. I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with the heat assistant program, where it started out too many years ago as a pilot program and now has become this annual program, again, based on funding. The only difference is this assistant program, water assistant program that they are looking at is going to be available for 2 years, year-round. That is the goal, because a lot of times the water use is higher during the summer months, whereas the heat use is higher during the winter months. And so you can also apply more than once. So say that you are struggling and you're like, oh, my water's gonna get shut off. And the city right now does 90 days from bill date. And so in 90 days from their bill date that they haven't paid, we're gonna give them notice and then we terminate the water. Or we set up a payment agreement. We try to do that with anybody who's willing to call in and work with us. But it will allow them to call in and say, hey, my water's getting ready to be shut off. Workforce Services, the program, are the people that are helping with the program and getting it established. And they will contact us to help prevent the water from being shut off if they can. And if it's already shut off, they want to do everything they can to get it turned back on. Their turnaround time right now that they're promising is 48 hours. But given that people need water, it's essential to everybody's living circumstances, they want to increase that to be a lot quicker. And using Workforce Services will allow that turnaround time to be faster because they already have the data that this program is going to require to determine if people are approved or not. The other thing that is beneficial with the program is it will start looking at families that potentially don't have their water turned off, but they have they're struggling month to month to pay their bills. They're not priority, but they will be able to apply and get assistance monthly and apply several times through the year. So it's not a restriction of the one time at this time. That could always change, but with the goal that they are looking at for the federal grant is to allow it to be year-round.
Marcy, has there been a needs assessment done? I mean, do you have an idea, or a general idea of how many families will be able to use this?
I do not personally have that information. I have requested it from Workforce Services because the funds that are coming to Utah as a general is based on poverty levels in low-income families. And so we get a percentage of the pot, and it's like, I think, $8.4 billion pot that was dispersed across all of the United States. And so we get a percentage of that, and then when those funds are out, we won't have any more money available, but the numbers for that will hopefully come by September, and I'd be happy to present that to you guys or give that to you.
And Marcy, obviously this agreement is between the city and Workforce Services because that's who we serve. Is the program available countywide, and it will go to the other service providers?
So yes, actually, Dana has asked to have a conversation with me with groundwater and sewer because I've been very involved. I've participated in every single conference meeting. I've had discussions directly with the lady that is putting on the program. Her and 3 other people have headed this. They've been working on it for a year. And I've actually asked Dana, are you guys going to participate? Dana's in groundwater and sewer. And she said they would like to. She just hasn't had time and is hoping to sit down with me to get a better understanding on where things are. But she too would like to participate. So as long as they go into the agreement, they fill out what they call the vendor application, they will too be able to participate. So, and it'll disperse between all of us.
Thank you for sticking around and answering all these questions.
No problem.
Any other questions for Marcy? And thanks for putting the agenda item together.
Will you entertain a motion?
I would.
I move to approve the agreement for the water assistance program between the City of Moab and the Department of Workforce Services.
I'd second.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Karen. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Marcy. And agenda item 9, approval of the bills against the City of Moab. Tony.
No, okay. I move to approve the bills against the City of Moab in the amount of $398,741.06.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. Any fun facts to share?
If I had a functioning memory at this point, I might have remembered some.
But otherwise, no. Okay. Is there, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We're now at section 10 of our agenda. We're having an executive closed session. And so I'll say goodbye to the members of the community that are sitting in this council.
You want to take a motion and take a small recess, Mayor?
Would you prefer that, Summer? Okay. I don't know that I need a motion. We'll just take a recess.
Okay, we'll have to take the motion and then go into closed session either way. You have to do it now or when we come back.
Do you want a motion or do you want it
I
later?
just feel like we're just going to turn some things off. And does somebody need the bathroom? Otherwise, we'll just sit here and we'll just do it. I will not take the motion to go into closed session until we're ready to go in, which should be close. Everybody just hold on. We'll just get the technology together and then we'll do a motion to go into close.